what is normal? We all have challenges.
Yeah.
We all have challenges. We have to fight through whatever our circumstances are and find something that we're passionate about and that we're good at, because everybody has something that they're good at. We're not all made to be alike, and you are normal in your way. Everybody is unique. And it's important. What if we were all the same? How boring would that be,
Right. This is the Turn Your Life Around podcast, and I'm the 180 Lady. I've been helping people turn their lives around since 2007 as the founder and CEO of a large mental health company. The purpose of this podcast is to have meaningful conversations with old friends and new friends, everyday people just like you and me, about how they turn their lives around. We'll discuss all things mental health, fitness, finances, relationships, parenting, spirituality, you name it. My hope is that you can take something away that will encourage you today. I'm your host, Sarah Coates. Are you ready to turn your life around? Hello, welcome to the Turn Your Life Around podcast. Really excited about our guest that we have joining us in studio today. Leah Wright graduated from Meredith College with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration and a certification in elementary education. She is a national board certified teacher. Leah retired in 2018 after 30 years in the Wake County public school system. Thank you for your service. Motivated by a lived experience with her teenage son and driven by her faith, Leah founded a recovery high school to provide a safe, sober, and academically rigorous environment for students in recovery from substance use. And so I am so excited to have Leah on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I would love for you to just share a little bit with the audience about the recovery high school you founded, how this even came to be. I mean, let's just deep dive into your story, because I know you're turning many lives around through your efforts. So tell us a little bit about your academy.
So we opened in August of 2021 with 2 students. And since then, we've served nearly 30 families, different families. And just, when you talk to these students and they say things like, this is the first school I've ever felt loved or accepted, or, without WMA, I'd be dead. Those are some powerful things to hear. So it's just it's very healing for me personally, but just to see these kids truly transform and turn their lives around is a really amazing experience to be a part of. Just very grateful.
Wake Monarch Academy, located right here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, within an Open Table United Methodist Church.
Okay, wonderful.
You know where Krispy Kreme is? We're a couple of blocks away from that. So very easy to find.
Wonderful. And it's a nonprofit.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you even get started or even start thinking about a recovery high school? Because there's not one, to my knowledge, in this area.
Not in this area. There is another one in Charlotte, but that's it for the entire state of North Carolina. So not nearly enough. Well, it really honestly started with lived experience. Around the age of 13, my son started, smoking marijuana, and, my husband and I quickly acted on that. And then, after the marijuana usage, it just continued to escalate. And we were just like, there's something more with this behavior, and numerous, psychologists and psychiatrists, and not one was really, they were addressing that mental health, with depression, anxiety, ADHD. But, as we learned later on, they learned to manipulate. He learned to say what he knew that they wanted to hear, right? Or thought they knew what they wanted to hear. And then it just, got in trouble, left him in jail even, and just trying to find help. We're desperate to find help and just couldn't. And so years into this, he had been in multiple rehabs by this time. And a doctor, he had agreed to go to IOP, or intensive outpatient. Yeah. And the doctor said to me, well, you need recovery too. And the first words out of my mouth was like, I'm good. I don't use. It's like, no, you need recovery. Addiction is a family disease. And it was really the first time I'd ever heard about that. And so I entered family recovery as really a deal with my son. You do recovery, and I'll do this family support group, and we'll do recovery together. It's like still not getting it. Like still trying to help him and do recovery for him, even though he had agreed to that particular treatment. But it was the first time I'd been around people who had gone through similar circumstances. The first time I felt not alone. And we were, of course, years into this by this time. But I had heard about a documentary called Generation Found at about a recovery high school. And my son was about 19 at this time. And I was like, wow, that's a really cool idea. That would have been great to have. But it really went in one ear and out the other. And fast forward about a year and a half later, by this time, the addiction had developed into heroin addiction. And it just felt very lost. But it truly was laid on my heart. About this recovery high school. Thought it was going crazy to begin with, like elementary school teachers, like that didn't even make sense, right? But I thought about this film again. And so other things had happened that I just couldn't get away from it, that it was something I felt like I was supposed to do. And certainly was researching it and had talked to Mary and Charlotte. They were about 2.5 years ahead of us about what she had done. They weren't open yet at that time. And then just said on a Sunday afternoon, told my husband, I said, I want to watch this film, this documentary together, and then I'll tell you why. And throughout the whole entire documentary, I just bawled because I could see how our son would have thrived in that environment. And so after the film was over, I turned to my husband and said, well, I've never experienced anything like this before, but I'm supposed to start this school. I have no idea what to do, how to do, but I've been doing some research, and would you support my efforts? And he's like, getting ready to retire. I'm like, I know none of it makes sense, but the harder I try to fight not doing it, the harder it is to get away from it. And so I'm just going to trust. And so, I asked him, I talked to him, had his support, and then our son was actually staying in an Oxford house at this particular time, and picked him up on a Sunday afternoon and visited with him and talked to him and said, what do you think? What are your thoughts about me starting this school? Because, you can't help but, people are going to ask, why are you doing this? And I wanted to be respectful. Are you going to be good with, me sharing our story, my experience? And from the very beginning, he was very supportive. So then it was really, I got a friend that we had developed a friendship that had worked with my son, addiction professional, and a few members of family support group, my husband, youth pastor. And at our church, we sat at a round table. There's a team 7 of us, and said, well, we want to start a recovery high school. How do we do that? And just started planning and developed a team. We started doing Generation Found screenings, actually, because what better way to get out a message about the need for recovery high school than actually show what had truly been transformational in my own life.
Wow.
And so we started doing screenings and developed a team, and we'd have a group, working on fundraising. We'd have a group working on academics, and we'd have, group working on marketing and different things. And so the original plan was to open in August of 2020. Working on finding a location. And then in January, we were going to start inspections and get the ball rolling, and we all know what happened. And so kind of shut everything down. And so obviously we didn't open in 2020, but delayed by a year. But we did what we could, when no one could meet. We worked on more business stuff and, handbook and all the things that you need to open up a school.
Yeah.
So that's the short version.
Oh my goodness. I did not realize that it's only a few years old.
Right.
For some reason, I thought Wake Monarch Academy had been around for at least a decade or so.
Yeah, no.
It is newish.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh.
It really is. And so we especially think of a nonprofit business, even though we've been doing, the first meeting was in 2018, which was a little while ago, but literally building something from scratch and everything that you need, it takes quite a while.
My goodness.
Yeah. We've been very, from the get-go, even before we started raising money, we did even a GoFundMe page. We realized, hey, we need to go to, if we're going to do this, let's go to the convention, the Association of Recovery Schools, And we did our first convention in June of 2018 to start meeting other recovery high schools from across the nation that were successful and picking their brains, so to speak, of what works, and really just took from the top recovery high schools in the nation of what worked for them and developed our own programming of what we wanted our school to look like and what we thought it was important. And, it's funny, I'll tell the teachers I didn't think, elementary school education, which didn't make sense, right? But I tell you, I have used more strategies from being an elementary school teacher with the kids that have a shorter attention span, and putting things together than I really thought that I ever would have. But
So tell us a little bit, who is a typical ideal student candidate for Wake Monarch Academy?
So it's a student who's, let's say, gone to residential treatment, and they realize that going back to my high school, same people, places, and things, it's not going to be the good environment, right? And even, parents, even if you change schools, if someone wants to use, it doesn't matter. They're going to find out, right? But if they go, you know what, I really want to continue my recovery. I found that in treatment. I've been doing well. Finding a school where you're around other peers that are going through similar things, have had similar struggles, that can relate. And have an environment that is will continue your education, right? We're a college-ready program, so we didn't want families to think they were getting less.
Right.
It's still a rigorous program. We have dual enrollment with Wake Tech, so our juniors and seniors can start earning college credit. But it gives them an environment that's safe and supportive, and really trying to not just have that environment, and continue their sustained recovery, but also good education. But really, how do you be a well-rounded individual? There's support for families as well. So really trying to build and mend those relationships that have been broken.
Right.
We're not a treatment center by any means, but we do work with community partners to be able to provide that wraparound support for the student and the family, to provide them the best case scenario for them to get back on their feet and be successful, and hopefully, sustain the recovery and for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But we know how recovery, works sometimes. And so we also are able to be there and help the family when there are setbacks to get the student, back on track if that's what they want to do.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I'm assuming there's built-in peer supports of some sort.
Yes. We have recovery support. In fact, we start each day with what we call a check-in. So that's our recovery support that leads our check-in. So it could be a particular topic that the students are working on, or a particular step that we are a 12-step based program that they're working on or learning about. And then our academics start. So we start, or there's something that's come up in with the community that needs to be discussed. But we don't start fresh with academics. It's with that check-in, to check in on their mental health, check in on the recovery. I have recovery celebrations. Recently, we just had one of our students celebrate 2 years in recovery. Another one last week that celebrated a year, and another one celebrates a year tomorrow.
Incredible.
Yeah, so we do our celebrations certainly in the morning, where they get their earned chips, and it's a big thing.
Yeah,
it's a big thing. It's hard enough to be a teen and a teenager, period.
Yes, right.
But to be a teen and recovery, it just says a lot about all that they have overcome, and just their goals and aspirations, how they've kind of changed perspective on life.
Yeah. And is it a traditional school day, like hours?
Yes. So I always tell the students and families that our school day is 8 to 4. However, we really try to work with putting responsibility back on the students. So every student has their own individualized education plan, as well as their own individualized recovery plan.
Right.
So they have academic goals every day. And so if they meet their academic goal every day, then they actually get to leave at 3.
Yeah.
So it's not, us saying, come on, stay, get your work done. They know, hey, I can leave at 3 o'clock at the end of the school day. But our recovery support is kind of integrated throughout the school day.
Yeah.
So we have, like, for example, today, they go to CrossFit. That's our gym class.
Okay.
But at Neuse River CrossFit is actually part of a program called Phoenix CrossFit, and all the coaches are in recovery.
Oh, no kidding.
So multiple times, even though they're there for gym class, which we know exercise is an important part of recovery, they're getting recovery pep talks before and after. And what's really cool is over when we're on break, that for whether it's a holiday break or spring break coming up, they'll go to the gym just because of a relationship and work out with Christy, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. Well, and they've got, again, those supports built in.
Exactly.
People who understand what they've gone through.
Right.
I can see how that's so important. Is it a traditional school calendar or is it year long?
So it's modified year round. So the most the students are out is 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we adopt what we call a summer session when summer starts. So we have a 2 weeks on and then 2 weeks off program, but to kind of give them a little bit of summer. But we found very early on that really 2 weeks, as much as these teens say they don't like structure, they like structure.
Yeah.
They are ready to come back and ready to get in a routine again. And so 2 weeks is really the most that they are out. They really need to be out.
Yeah, I can imagine too much time away, especially if they're early on into their recovery process.
Yeah.
That could be dangerous.
Exactly. And so we make sure even over the break that they're staying in touch with recovery support and regular meetings to attend to that, working with their sponsor and so forth. So it's good to do that.
How many how many teachers are on staff? Are you teaching or you have
no. So I work certainly with the students in a multitude of areas, but honestly, no, teaching is, we have two retired themselves, but they have come back that have, between all three of us, we have over 100 years of teaching experience. So it makes it feel really old, right? But no, they are very specialized in math, science, and so they work with the students even on all different levels. But we have a program called Edmentum or Ed Options, which is the only way we could offer accredited classes. So they're also, it's online, right? But it's taught by North Carolina certified teachers as well. So our teachers that are in person provide direct instruction, but they also support the online teachers. And that way, that's the way we could have rolling enrollment, so students could come at any time during the year and truly have a program that meets them where they are, and develop a program to most of the time catch them up. Most of the time they are behind, to kind of catch them up to where they should be, and then get them on a path towards graduation. So there is direct instruction there, and our teachers, so 2 teachers there. One comes in around about 11:30. She actually works contracting with Wake County still. And so she comes in the afternoon, but then we have Kathy. Everybody's by first name basis. We're breaking down those barriers from the get-go of meeting the student. Even though I was Mrs. Wright for many, many years, it's Leah. Everything is first name basis. This is dressed up for me today. Normally it's tennis shoes and yoga pants. I mean, it really just the comfort level of just like, here, we love you. You're here. You're in a safe environment. And because most of school experiences have not been good. Right. Whether they've been, suspended or expelled because of their use, this gives them an environment to where that it's really kind of family comfortable environment. Really doesn't look like a school. Right. There's only one classroom that looks like you're like what could be a typical school with your tables and chairs. Others is like couches and ping pong table and pool table where it's relaxed, but it really meets them where they are and provides an environment that's comfortable for them to be able to move on and pursue whatever goals they have.
Incredible. I mean, I can already tell the programming you've put together is just really outstanding. So how do you source your funding? I mean, how is this paid for? Because it's nonprofit.
Yes. I wish it were free. Yeah. Maybe one day, but we are tuition based. Right. So tuition is $1,625 a month, or $19,500 a year. So, and that's we compared to other private schools, it certainly is less than that. But certainly $100 a month can be expensive for a family. So we are North Carolina Opportunity Scholarship School.
I was going to ask.
Yep. So we're able to take, that state funding for families that qualify for that, or their ESA Plus program, for those that, have other needs, IEPs or so forth. So we're that. And then we also offer financial aid as well. Yeah. So, but that's limited. Because again, having to fundraise that, but we don't want finances to be a barrier for any student. So that is 30% of our operating budget. But the rest we have to fundraise, or we do have some grants, smaller grants that we've been able to get, and then or private donors that make up the 70%.
Yeah, incredible. I know you have a really big fundraising event coming up at the end of this month. Tell us about that.
So Gala for Recovery, it'll be our third one. Normally it's in November, but we did postpone it due to all the devastation in Western Carolina. So be February 22nd at North Carolina State University Club. We have Daryl Strawberry, who's going to be our keynote, who has an amazing journey and story of recovery himself. He'll be our keynote. And then Renee Chu from WRAL, she'll be our MC for the evening. So it's a fun evening where we celebrate recovery. We celebrate our students. And it gives them a chance to hear personal testimonies from one of our students, from a parent, and truly get to see kind of what WMA is all about, and have a nice dinner as well. So I have a silent auction, live auction, things that a paddle race, things that a typical gala fundraiser would be, but certainly it's to dress up, and dress to the nines that night, just come out and have a special dinner and evening to celebrate these kids and all that they've done. Yeah. And what we're doing, that the fact that there definitely needs to be more of us, more ways that we can help support these families and more families out there. Right. Because addiction, as you know, does not discriminate, and it can happen to any family. Absolutely. And that's another reason too to share stories, because we help break that stigma. Yeah. And help encourage others to share their story. Right. And not hide. I hid for many years. The only way that you knew things were going on in our family were if you're a neighbor, because you saw cop cars in our driveway. Or talk with me, because I was pulled out of my classroom on multiple occasions. Fuquay Police Department's on the phone, or Holly Springs Police Department's on the phone. And because I learned early on of the stigma, just to kind of share, and you'd immediately get, And, as a parent, I understand if someone's trying to find a reason of like what happened. Yeah. Is there traumas or something? There must be something going on at home. And that's what was really hard, because I'm like, this is a great family, and, husband, and we go on family vacations and eat dinner together, and it still happened to us. And, but it took, several years to really be not, I don't want to say not care anymore, but kind of just like, if you want to judge me, go right ahead. Right. I know I'm a good mom, and, he brought up in a happy home, but it still happened to us. And then the more we shared our story, then you heard of other families going through similar things, coming from good families as well. Right. And so it just kind of fuels the passion to, when you share your story, you can help somebody else. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely, which is why I appreciate you sharing today so far, because definitely I know it's going to reach someone. Yeah. That is the purpose of this podcast, is people giving them space, to just share their stories. Right. You mentioned earlier when we first started chatting that, addiction is a family disease. You're already talking about stigma. I know it carries a lot of shame and judgment from outsiders looking in. If you don't mind sharing a little bit, how did you even figure this out? You mentioned your son was 13. Were there any signs? Did you completely miss it? How did it come to be?
Yes and yes. Yes. I had not had any experience with this. I'd not had this in my family, immediate family, that we knew that was going on. And so and again, we caught him with marijuana and addressed that, and thought maybe this was just a one and done, and here's a consequence, don't do it again, and thinking this is going to be the end of it.
Yeah.
And caught him again. And then, all right, is this like typical teenage behavior? And I mean, we were like, if you go spend the night here, let me talk to the parents. I
Right.
mean, it wasn't like he would just go, right? And we really tried to follow him as much as we could, right? And had consequences in place. But we just noticed there was a difference in behavior. And when his grades started going, he was making good grades, and then there was a decline in his grades, and became very oppositional, and like something, there's more there. And so, as I mentioned earlier, multiple, psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists, and not one of them pulled us aside and said, "Hey, Jimmy, Leah, there's an addiction here."
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, like so many people miss that. They didn't screen for it, or they didn't suspect it from him. I mean, it's incredible.
I honestly, they, looking back on it and hearing even what he said, he goes, I knew what they wanted to hear.
Right. He's
I'm certainly not going to. Yeah, exactly. He goes, I was there and played up, I guess, the anxiety and depression. Of course, that can be caused by substances, right?
Sure.
And as a teen, you're not really sure. Is it more mental health? Is it more addiction? What is it? But then we started getting in trouble with the law and just like in shoplifting things. I'm like, what? The first time he shoplifted and found out about it, and I was just, you were not reared this way. What's going on? I mean, we had his record expunged, thinking, again, this is not going to happen again. And then it just was over and over, just very consistently kind of going downhill, right? And desperate to find help. I mean, we tried to find help the first time he was in juvenile jail. And by this time, we had found like an addiction professional that we had sought out, that had some experience with that. But we still could not get placement for him. Like, okay, well, he's now working with a therapist, right, who is specialized in addiction. Of course, we were already in probably 3 or 4 years by this time, again, because it had been masked so far, but we're the ones that kept pushing it. And like, there's something more. And then I had found, just to kind of show how early I was in my own recovery, my husband had dental surgery. And had, when they're little, you lock the pain medicine up, and honestly didn't think about it. He had dental surgery, and he had put it under the bathroom sink and didn't think any more about it. And we were over at a friend's house this one particular evening, and he had gone to his medicine cabinet to get some pain meds. He was having some trouble with his back. And there were several couples over there, and his pain medicine was missing. And that started a conversation in their neighborhood. We weren't even neighborhood in which we lived, and said, yeah, there's, so-and-so, he had gotten his parents' pain meds. And we just thought, well, that's kind of weird. But it kind of all put us on guard. Well, maybe we should check, know? And so came home and went to look at, under the, bathroom sink, and found the pain meds that seemed like quite a few were missing. And went to my husband, and I said, did you take all of these? And he's like, no, I didn't take all those. And of course went and confronted our son, who just blatantly lied, and believable, right?
Right.
For me, thinking that, honestly, I remember thinking, my husband took more than he realized that he did. I mean, it just did not make the connection as much as the behavior. And I just remember not even thinking that he could do something like this,
right?
Or would even, know what to do. Why would you do that? It just shows how early where I was in my own thinking. But then tried to find help, even working with that addiction professional. Hey, I think there's a significant problem. There's more than what he's sharing, right? And fought with the insurance company. Like, he wasn't literally, quote, bad enough.
I mean,
And
what does bad enough even
exactly.
look like?
I mean, I remember honestly, not a very soft voice
Yeah.
with the rep on the other line. I'm like, what do you mean he's not bad enough? What's it going to take for him to be bad enough? He's going to be dead before, you know, I
right.
can ever get him some help. Of course, again, we're several years into it, but had it escalated. But finally, and then we're also dealing with a suicide ideation. He was in and out of, you know, hospitals. And so there was just a lot going on there. So again, it's like, okay, is there mental health? Is it addiction? We know it's like, what's going on? But there was just something more. But finally, when he was 17, we were able to get him into rehab and stayed there, you know, your typical, you know, 60 days, or at this time, about 60 days, and picked him up in January, actually on his 18th birthday. And I remember thinking, he's fixed. Life could go back to normal. And we just, you know, now he's got the help that he needed, and we'll continue with seeing, you know, the therapist for mental health. But now we found someone that's, you know, has an addiction professional, and we're good, right? Well, good for a little while. And looking back on it, had I truly known what was even ahead of us, I would have, the worst was yet to come, right? And so, I mean, it ultimately, you know, what started, you know, smoking and led to pills, then ultimately to heroin addiction. And, and so fortunately, occurring years into it, found a family support group to be able to get help. And I remember sitting there and hearing this family, husband and wife, sharing their son was in recovery, and sharing that he had showed up at their door on Thanksgiving Day. And the sister answered the door, and they wouldn't let him in. And I remember sitting there, we're all sitting in a big circle, and I remember sitting there going, how could you do that? Thinking to myself,
Right.
how could you do that? You closed the door. You wouldn't even let your son in on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, any day, but I mean, Thanksgiving Day. But you know, wouldn't let your son live at home. I would never do that. Well, fast forward, you know, years later, where ultimately, you know, in and out of multiple rehabs, and yeah, and putting boundaries, had been, you know, juvenile jail and gotten in trouble, and working with a professional. And I'll never forget, the family support group leader looked at me one day and she said, Leah, you're going to love your son to death. And that was I'll never forget that day. And it really woke me up that there was some enabling, or a lot, right? Because I thought I was loving him, right? And I thought that I was helping him and doing, you know, what a protective mother, you know, should be doing. But really kind of started to dive into educating myself and really listening to, you know, there's a difference between what's enabling and loving, right? And so, and realized that I was really enabling behavior, and was sharing with the group and so forth things that were happening, till ultimately, like, you're going to have to make a hard decision. Like, he's not wanting help, right? And at this time, we'd even tried, you know, healing transitions. Never forget the first time that he was there. And again, when I think back to where I was in my own personal recovery, he had 29 days. We had called in, like, the family. He's getting his 30-day chip tomorrow. And he's doing great. And about 11:30 on the 29th day, I get this call. Of course, they weren't allowed to have their phones, and I see, you know, his name appear on my phone. I'm like, what's going on? And I picked up the phone, and he's like, I've left. And I went, you what? And he says, yeah, I'm walking down 401. And I mean, it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. And that was the first of 3 times trying at healing transitions for him, and had overdosed, and then, but he just was not ready then. And so working with family support, that we had to make that decision of like, we've done everything that we know to do. But, you cannot come, back home, right? We had tried for a little bit. Okay, we'll try healing transitions. But I'm like, if you're not willing to stay there and do that, like you can't live at our home and continue to put needles in your arm, and it was horrible. That became the darkest part of my life. Truly saying like, you cannot stay here. When you're ready for help, like we want to help you, but you're not. Multiple rehabs, you're not willing to continue beyond healing transitions. You're not working the program there. Like when you're ready, let us know. And so we were, goodness, he was probably about 20, 21 at this time, and around Thanksgiving, no less. And he couch surfing, just different things, and got a call. My husband and I were about 30 minutes outside of Myrtle Beach, seeing some family down there, and got a call from Wake Med, and that he had overdosed, and needless to say, turned the car around, and we're able to meet him and talk to him, and he's like, I'm ready. And so by then I'd already been working on the school and had contacted Green Hill Recovery, and had become, Trip was will forever hold a special place in my heart, because I made one phone call and said, hey, he's overdosed, and had been trying to had looked even into Green Hill Recovery, trying to get him into there if he was willing. And he just wasn't ready then. Yeah. And so made some calls, and on Thanksgiving Day, we had gotten plane tickets. Buying plane tickets on Thanksgiving Day is just not the financial, but hey, you know what? You had that window of time. He said he wanted to help, and we were able to find some help. And so on Thanksgiving Day, my son and I flew to Lubbock, Texas, for him to go into detox. And he was there for a while, went into sober living for a while, and then he didn't want to stay there. And a friend of his had moved to Florida, and he's like, I'm gonna go down there. And he stayed there for a while, and then decided, well, you know what? Heroin's my DOC or drug of choice. It's okay for me occasionally, like drink, occasionally, smoke. I'll be okay. And handled it for a while, right? Until, like not 3 years, about in January of, I guess it was about 21 at this time, and had suspected some things were going on, and was in touch with his roommate in Florida, and found out that he was not doing heroin now, he was doing fentanyl. And so I had, again, from another connection through the school's been helped me personally as well, was able to, they were starting an Insight program down in Tampa, Florida, and was able to get in touch with the director down there. They weren't open yet, but the director had started a relationship, reached out to my son, and over time had said, hey, you need some help, right? And finally convinced him to go into, to get some help at the Insight program, which was in Atlanta. And so truly by the grace of God that he was able to get from Florida to Atlanta and started the Insight program there. Because I told him, he's like, well, rehabs don't work for me. And I'm like, well, the Insight program is a little bit different. It's longer. They have a different program. And so if you're wanting help, let's try that. We've tried other options. Let's try that. And so with that relationship and He spent 10 days in detox and then started that program and then got into AA heavily. And he's been sober since. And for him, he had to realize that no, uh, alcohol is not my DOC, marijuana is not my DOC, but eventually, like it'll lead me back to what is. And so he had to realize that and that he can't do anything. And so 100%, abstinence-based, celebrate tomorrow with 3 years. And he works actually at a treatment center outside of Atlanta, giving back, and is in business development now. So now he's using, his story to help others. And so truly feel very blessed because in all, talking to families that have lost their children, and for him to have already had, multiple overdoses, I can't give a reason as to why he's
still here.
He's still here, but very grateful and very blessed that he is and is able to use his story in his way to help others and to get into treatment and truly be able to meet them and say, hey, these are all the things that I've done. Don't get to the point that I did.
Right.
And so he's kind of approaching it to really work with those that need treatment themselves. And here with the high school, it's let's get them in recovery early.
Yeah.
And so their families don't have to go through what we did. If the student, the adolescent can find recovery early and not have to be, older in their, mid-20s or older before they want recovery. And when they've already experienced that their life is unmanageable.
Yeah.
That they get the help that they need at a young age that, who knows? I mean, when watching that Generation Found, I just thought, wow, he would have thrived in that environment. And who knows, had he had that opportunity, that his addiction wouldn't have developed to where it did.
Yeah.
I certainly would have liked to have seen or had that opportunity, but it didn't happen for us. And so, grateful that he is alive and helping in his own way at the age of 27 now, and that we're helping other families not have to go through what we did to get the help early, and also help with the families. I hear so many things that are very similar, and we all have different journeys. But to hear other families that have come in and go, well, he was in rehab and I thought he was fixed. It is so relatable because I'm I thought that way too.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to help the families and say, even though I'm not personally in recovery, but I get where you're coming from as a parent because I had those feelings too. I thought the same way too.
Right.
But also being very vocal about working with other community partners of how can we share our story and how can we get, red flags of something as these parents need to understand. These are red flags.
Yeah.
These are things that you can recognize early. Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't think that, well, this is typical teenage behavior, or I used to smoke, when I was in high school. This is, you can't think that way,
Yeah. What would be some red flags that you would throw out to family members,
Goodness,
to parents right now?
Yeah. If you see your child that's been making good grades and has not been, argumentative, or there's a change of behavior that's pretty declines, pretty steadily, and they're making good grades and now they're bringing home, D's and don't really care about it, or they're becoming more isolated in their bedroom. All of those things are where they're going to tell you, the teen's going to tell you, I'm just talking on the phone with my friends, or I'm just but there's just anything that kind of just makes you go, trust your instinct. Right. Trust your instinct and know that, yes, your child will absolutely can lie straight to your face and be as believable, lock your medicine up.
Yep.
Lock your medicine up. Don't be trusting we just didn't, not that we didn't try, we just didn't even think about it. He's not a little kid, we're not locking our cabinets up like he was when he was a, toddler.
Right.
We just didn't even, our brains didn't even go there, But it's all of those things that when your son or your daughter is just not acting like themselves, but they tell you one thing, there's more going on there.
Yeah.
And knowing that, yes, substances can cause, or contribute to the anxiety and the depression, that looking at it not just with mental health,
Right.
like there might be an underlying reason, explore all of those areas. And we just didn't do that at first. It was mental health, right? This is what we're doing, until it just was not it was getting worse.
Yeah.
Like there's something more to it than that. And then just trying to find help and being desperate and not finding it. I mean, places that I would call, people would say, well, how old is he? I'm like 15, 16, 17. Well, sorry, we serve 18 or above. And we did find one place that was in the mountains, 25 to 30K a month. I mean, we couldn't afford that.
Yeah, who can do that?
We couldn't afford that. And so, we were desperate. And so when a parent thinks, well, goodness, leaving him in jail is safer than him being at home, that's exactly how we felt. Because goodness, if I can't get him into rehab, he's not safe here because he's sneaking out. And who knows, as much as we try to figure out who he's hanging out with, I mean, there's something more there.
Yeah.
That may be a safe place to keep him there while we try to find help for him. That's what we did. But that shouldn't be right. A parent shouldn't have to
make that choice.
Make that choice or be desperate to find help and can't find help. And it's unfortunately, addiction is the only disease that I know of where people aren't showing up at your house with casseroles. They aren't. It's maybe one day when someone says, my child's been diagnosed with leukemia, you would get the same reaction as, my child, has been diagnosed with a disease of addiction. You get the same reaction, and you just don't, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, especially like with us, if you don't know anybody else going through it, you hide, and you try to figure things out for yourselves,
right?
And you're still trying to figure out, like, where do we go wrong?
Yeah, how did we get here?
And I'm like, how do we miss these things? And I can look back now, especially with the pills, of what I think, like, my brain just did not want to even go there. And of course, years later, I asked him about it, and he's like, I was selling them.
That's
like,
what I was wondering, if he was selling them.
Yeah, he was selling them. And certainly my husband didn't take more. But again, my brain just was not willing to look at what was right in front of me. And I've heard that from so many other parents. So it's like, you can't beat yourself up.
Right.
And it's like, that's where family support groups are so helpful, where, I learned the C words. I didn't cause this. I can't cure it. I can't control it, and I can't change it. The only thing I can change is my own behavior. And my own behavior is, again, learning, like, these are enabling behaviors that I'm doing, right? I don't need to enable this behavior. I can love him through it. And sometimes with the disease of addiction, you have to love at a distance to save their life. And, when I hear him, when he'll tell me about, what he shares with other families, and he goes, he will recognize enabling behavior. And he's been able to tell families that, look, had my mom and dad not done what they did, I would be dead. And he goes, they actually helped save my life. Whereas at that time, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life, to see, my son walking down the road with nothing on his back. That, just, it was horrible. It was horrible. But again, being a person of faith, I mean, that's something that for me was very helpful to me, and it helped me get through a very difficult time, and still does. That I have to just, no parent is ever going to be okay with, a police officer showing up at their door saying that their child is dead. And I lived in fear daily. It's even something that we've talked to the students at school, like, as parents, we have our own triggers, right? And that we need our own recovery too. And that, especially kids coming out of rehab, they're like, oh, I expect to give all these privileges back. And it's like, understand, like, your parents, this is how not them, but this is how I felt as a parent. Or they'll come in school mad. Well, my mom did this, or my dad did this. And I'm able to sit down with them. I'm like, well, I'm not your mom or dad, but probably what your mom meant by this, or your dad meant by this, was, this and able to, and they'll say, well, I didn't think of it that way. I'm like, you can't expect your parents to give you the privileges back. You've got to prove, that you're trustworthy, and it takes time, and it's a healing process for everyone. And so that's what's been, for me, is be able to use my own story and to help the kids from a different perspective, but also help other parents. Like you can't blame yourself. You can't shoulda, woulda, coulda. I mean, every teen is different. If there was a parent manual of how, I mean, there's just not, right? They're all different, and we do the best that we can. But we didn't, what began maybe as a choice for them, that's what a disease of addiction, their brain literally becomes hijacked.
Well, and the thing too is like people don't understand the disease component.
Right.
Because there are plenty of kids who have smoked a little marijuana and they did not become addicts.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Because their brain is different than the kids who did, and it kept on going.
Right.
That's why I think society really needs to understand it is a disease, just like somebody who has heart disease or diabetes.
Exactly.
Everybody's body is different.
Exactly.
Some react differently.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just even like the importance of Narcan, like what a defibrillator, can't even say that word, to a heart patient. I mean, Narcan has saved, my son's life multiple times. You're giving them another chance to hopefully turn their life around, but it is a disease. And, I remember my son, saying so many times, I don't understand why, this guy can go, or this, friend can do this and I can't. And I'm like, well, shouldn't be doing that anyway, right? But I don't know. That's where your brain just is different, And he's like, I just want to be normal, and that just breaks my heart. And I've heard some of the students, I just want to be normal. I'm like, you are normal. What is normal? We all have challenges.
Yeah.
We all have challenges. We have to fight through whatever our circumstances are, and find something that we're passionate about and that we're good at, because everybody has something that they're good at. We're not all made to be alike, and you are normal in your way. Everybody is unique, and it's important. What if we were all the same? How boring would that be,
Right.
And so, again, I think, that lived experience, even for the kids, I mean, is so important. I mean, our recovery support, they're all in recovery, they can relate and they can talk. I mean, they're our first line. I mean, that's the most important job, at the school, is that the recovery support, because they are in recovery. They know the experience.
Yeah.
And, we all staff kind of looks at it from a different lens, from a parent perspective, and our teachers have been touched by addiction. So we're all there to kind of, again, that wraparound support for the students, and to be able to offer different perspectives to try to help them, to be the best person that they can be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What an incredible story.
Well, thank you.
It's incredible to me, as a therapist, I listen to people's stories all the time, have for 2 decades.
Right.
But, it's like the struggles that people go through, if they do not succumb to the struggle, if they're able to overcome it through faith, through support, through, whatever, if they're able to overcome it and then use that momentum, to help others, it's just the purpose of them being here on this planet, and so it's obvious to me that your struggle has purpose, your son's struggle has purpose, and you both are, and your husband alongside, are going to be able to help so many families literally turn their lives around, but thrive, and live life to the fullest. So what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, certainly wouldn't wish the journey on anyone.
No.
But, it's something to tell the kids, even like, well, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of the life. Well, you're not supposed to. Right?
That's right.
Right? You're not supposed to. And that's why we, like, part of our program too is Wednesday Wellness, where is service learning. So we work with multiple community partners, and where they're around varied adults, just with different experiences, good role models, and just to help them experience or introduce them to different careers or whatnot. And it's like your purpose may not come for a while. And I said, I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. And I'm like, I thought my purpose, right, was to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 years, hundreds of kids that I've taught and still some I keep in touch with, right, to this day, who are married and have kids of their own, right? But I remember driving, I was probably in my 26th year teaching, and I will never forget, I was driving home. This was before any of this had really happened to be in the place where it developed. And I remember thinking, goodness, coming up on retirement in a few years, what am I going to do, right? And I feel like I'm pretty young, started teaching when I was 8. Wink, wink, right? What am I going to do, right? What is my purpose? And I remember thinking about that, and not really giving it much further, but just kind of like, But I've told the students, I said, you know what? Without a shadow of a doubt, like my purpose, everything I've gone through, even back to we work with a local horse farm and horses, right? I grew up with horses. They were very, instrumental. They were my best friends, and in high school, and just so didn't realize I was like in therapy then, but how therapeutic, the equine therapy is, and that was something I wanted to incorporate. We certainly don't call it equine therapy, but we've opened up each school year with doing service learning at a local farm. But while we're there and they're learning to ride and groundwork, they're also mucking stalls and cleaning water buckets, and we keep track of like those volunteer hours. But I told them, even from my own experience, I can look back through my whole life and say, that everything that's happened got me to this point, even for a journey that I wouldn't wish on anyone. But all of that was to get me here. And without a doubt, like this is my purpose, right? This is my purpose to do something I'm very extremely passionate about, to help others and help other families. I'm just very grateful that we're in a position that, that our son is still alive, but I know many families where their kids are not alive, but they are passionate about it, and they help doing things in their own way to help break the stigma. And we all do something with a purpose to try to help somebody else. And so you're right. I think just being able to, it's healing, it's healing to be able to know, no, it didn't directly, help me. Right. But really it is, to see these kids and to know that even when we started, we're like, even if we can make a difference in one life, like it'll all be worth it. And hands down, where I know that we've made a difference in many lives. And for the kids, when we have visitors at the school and they're like, hey, can we talk with some of the students? I'm like, sure. And bring them in, and out of their own mouth, they'll say, without Debbie May, hands down, saved my life. Like it just, it's like, wow.
That has to be so fulfilling.
Yeah.
What you've done and what your team has put together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Definitely a team effort for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
If a listener wants to find more about Wake Monarch Academy, where do they go?
So Wake Monarch Academy, online, they can look it up. We have our own website, .org, and it has all information about, our, what we're about, our even board of directors, board of advisors, our events, enrollment. We want students, because we're not a treatment program, coming from whether it's residential or IOP or outpatient or something, to have some where they've gotten some help, right? And then we're part of more like an aftercare plan for them. But they need to have at least 30 days in recovery, but sometimes that 30 days is hard. So we will work with families prior to that, kind of like a pre-enrollment success plan to try to help the adolescent to the 30 days so they can actually start the enrollment process if that's what they want to be. But it's like I tell the parents or their caregivers, like, you can wish all day long for your student to come here, right? But this is not a place where, well, you're not 18 and this is where you go. Like, no, your student has to want to come here. They have to want to work a program of recovery. They have to be down, for kid terms, for random and frequent drug screenings, not to try to catch them, but for accountability.
Yeah.
They have to be working a program and do what we do here at WMA and know that everything we do here is for a reason. But that if they stick with it, then the child or the teen that has entered the school will not be the same person. And they'll tell you themselves. And the other peers will say, yeah, I remember when you first came here, you were,
Right.
And it's just amazing to see the transformation to not only sustain the recovery, even when there's setbacks, but if there is a setback, getting back on track, but, getting them in a place where they want to work a program, but they're doing well academically and they have goals in life, and they care about those family relationships and other relationships, and knowing that these are, I caused this, right? This is not everybody else's fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's taking ownership, making amends,
Yeah.
And working a program of recovery. And it's just amazing to see the progress that they've made. Just so extremely proud of them and their parents too.
Yeah.
Where they've come a long way too. And we tell them, from the tour that if you are expecting all the recovery to be on your student, and you're just going to sit back or fix my student.
Right. I was going to say, fix my kid.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to be a good fit.
Right. They have to do their own work as well.
Exactly. So we're connecting them to family support. And, we certainly, you can tell, whether somebody's working a program of recovery or not, and it's sometimes you have to have hard conversations.
Right.
And that's difficult because, again, it's like you can't want recovery more for somebody than they want for themselves. Mm-hmm. And that also includes the family, And so, again, just trying from the very beginning, from that tour of breaking those barriers, but also saying, this is for everyone, right? This is for everyone. Everyone has to work their own plan,
mm-hmm.
And work together and not, again, love, and not enable, but educate yourself too, right? And over time, when they're ready, sharing their story. I'll never forget, this is several years ago, but we had a family, and the parent, she texted me like 11:30 one night, and she's like, I've written all this. Getting ready to put it out on social media. I'm ready to tell our story. And she's like, I'm scared. This is all, through messaging back and forth. And I'm like, understand. And she was big on social media. You understand that all these likes you may have gotten on your other posts, you may not get them. So don't feel just keep sharing your story, because people may not comment on your post or they may not like your post. Doesn't mean that they don't support it. But I promise you, the more you tell your story, somebody's going to know somebody, right?
Yeah.
And they may just reach out through Messenger, or they may tell a friend, and then that friend contacts you. But it's important just to share your story, because you don't know who you're inspiring. You don't know who you're helping.
Yeah.
But what you are helping is breaking that stigma, because you have stepped out and said, this is what's happening with our family. And so sure enough, she posted it, and she said, oh my gosh, you're right. Someone's already reached out to me through Messenger. And what's been great is the more they shared their story, they became they've spoken at the International Overdose Awareness Day. They've encouraged other parents to share their story because of what they did. So it's just been a very powerful, like a snowball, of just inspiring others to help, that there's no shame, there's no shame in this. It is something that, addiction is a disease, and it affects millions of people, and no one has to walk very far before they know someone that's been touched by addiction, right? And that there's nothing to be shameful about, right? But we have to help each other, and we're certainly not helping, anybody by condemning someone or, treating them in not the most respectful way that we should be treating them. I mean, we're dealing with a disease here, just like any other disease.
And it doesn't discriminate. I think that's That's the big thing to take away is, there's a lot of judgment cast on people and families
Yep.
who have addiction,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone at any
Yeah.
time. And you're a living proof of that.
Yeah.
And so I thank you so much today for sharing your story. Thank you for being open and willing to share.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Hope and pray that your son is going to continue to have a successful life and help many people as well.
Yes.
And thank you what you're doing in the
Thank you.
Triangle. And if you have, further questions, you want to learn more about Wake Monarch Academy, we will post the link in the show
Awesome.
notes, and listeners can find that information there. If you or your loved one is struggling with an addiction, please reach out. There's so many great resources in the Triangle. Little plug for 180 Counseling. We have 6 locations, including virtual and in-person visits, and we do treat individuals and families who are struggling with addiction. So please find us. You can find us at www.one80nc.com. That's ONE80, the number, nc.com. And of course, another great website, we'll link it as well, is Psychology Today. I think that's a great resource for families in the Triangle to find other addiction resources for their loved ones as well. And as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I appreciate you taking time to listen. These days we live in feel stressful, challenging, and maybe even chaotic. I'm really passionate about putting out positive content that will encourage and inspire others. I ask that you follow, subscribe, and even give us a 5-star review. Most of all, share this with your friends and family so together we can help people turn their lives around.